value-added tax. You still stand by that number, or are we looking at more?
We're looking at, our estimates show that with a 7.5% and the exemptions that we are proposing, that we should yield about $300 million for the entire year, for entire fiscal year. As you know, what we'll have is a half a year because we start in January, so we anticipate that we would collect about $150 million. We also anticipate that because of the VAT and the reporting requirements, and this has been the experience in other, particularly Caribbean countries, is that they begin to see an improvement in other taxes. So, for example, when they brought in VAT, they saw that, my customs duties also went up because of the enhanced reporting requirements, where you have to report monthly and quarterly and half yearly. And so that is what we are projecting, and that is based on a revenue model that we had developed with the assistance of the IMF, and so that is what we are estimating for the half year.
What about a threshold of businesses in terms of registration demands, requirements, imperatives? Is that still a part of the equation?
Yes, it is.
If you're 100,000 or less, you don't have to register. But there was the New Zealanders suggested that at the end of the day, even though that might be so, you're going to kind of almost be forced to register because people don't want to be doing business with
Exactly. And what our threshold is 100,000, because we had, again, when the issue was first mooted, one of the reaction of small business was, one, I'm going to have to buy all of this equipment, I'm going to hire staff, and it's going to be too onerous on me. And so in most countries, they have a registration threshold. We settled on 100,000 because we would still, at that level, businesses over 100,000 still represent the vast majority of the turnover in the country. But you're correct. What they said is that it is not, people might believe that it's an advantage to be exempt because you don't have to register, you don't charge, you don't collect, and so you're out. But the reality is that if you're not a registrant, then you cannot apply to get a refund or credit of what VAT you paid. And secondly, most businesses, because they want to get a refund, they want to deal with a business that is a registrant.
Exactly.
And so what they found was they had a lot of people coming forward to voluntarily register.
Okay.
And so we think we'd be prepared for that. But it's been so far. I'm happy we've gotten to this point, because it brings a level of certainty to what we're proposing, and so we can now aggressively go on with the education. It's a new system that Bahamians are not used to, and so it's a challenge with the education, but I think it's also an opportunity.
The reason I was about to ask this next question is for that very same point that you raised, and this is brand new for many businesses, having to report to the government. Obviously, there's going to be a learning curve.
Yes.
There will be some challenges. What strategies do you have as government to overcome those?
We will have workshops for training, where we will either go into the business and train their staff on how to the registration process, how to do the filings, so how to comply with the legislation. We'll also have workshops where people can come in larger groups and be taken through the process. And so there's going to be intensive education for business. As we get to January 1st on the implementation, we know it's a new thing, and so we're going to have to work out and tweak and make sure we perfect. And so we recognize that in the first month, at the end of the first month, the bigger businesses will start to report. And we're just going to have to work through to make sure that we it's a new thing, and so we're going to have to work with businesses.
What about compliance, Mr. Minister? This is an issue, of course, with tax regimes around the world.
Yes.
And there's a feeling that the government, not necessarily the PLP, but government period, has been a little bit relaxed in its enforcement attitude. Can the Bahamian people be assured? Because we are suffering in terms of our financial revenue streams. You need money in order to develop the country. Can the people of the Bahamas be confident that the PLP government is going to be aggressive? You owe money, you're going to pay it.
Yeah.
End of story. You owe it to the country to pay your bills.
Exactly, and we have been very aggressive. We've undertaken some initiatives in terms of business license, in terms of real property tax. A lot of money still owing. And so we're willing to make accommodations in terms of payment plans, which we have done in terms of business license and property tax, because in many cases, coming out of the experiences of the global recession, where you have businesses, for example, who might have run up arrears, even individuals. And so we're trying to balance that aggressiveness with trying to be accommodating. But you are quite right. We have a serious issue in this country with compliance. And I think what it is up to us to do, and maybe there's a model that will bring in some private sector involvement, because unfortunately, in a small society, there are a lot of pressures sometimes brought to bear, and to give me a break sort of mentality. But I think we just need to foster this this thinking that these things need to be paid, and it's a responsibility, and it's a duty, and it's not an option when it comes to that, particularly when we talk about something like a VAT, which is money collected from a customer, basically in trust to be given over to the government. There's no option of I'm going to use it and bring it back, or I need to owe you,
Mr. Minister, is there anything in this value-added tax regime that the customer, the individual homeowner, will have to do in terms of making a report to the government?
No.
Or is this strictly the business who is acting as an agent, in a sense, for the government, making a collection and doing whatever requirements, reporting requirements?
No requirements for the individual. It will act very much like a sales tax that we have most of us would have had experience with. You go in a store, you pay an item, and then there's a tax that is added to it. So no responsibility for reporting for the individual, unless they feel that they have been unjustly charged, because a registrant would have to display their registration certificate to show that they are registered with the government to collect VAT. If they don't have that and they are charging VAT, then that's an offense, and the public should report something like that.
Number of persons may have just joined our program, but today is an historic one. The value-added tax bill has now been presented to Parliament. The debate will be in a couple of weeks, next week. And there's also a bill to eliminate gender discrimination here in the Bahamas by way of a constitutional amendment. Eventually will come down to a referendum. You're saying, Mr. Minister, that there shall be or should not be any increase in the cost of living?
There will
or
be.
Is it minimal?
It'll be minimal. It'll be minimal. Our estimate is anywhere in the region of 3 to 4%, which will gradually dissipate. The studies show in about year 6, it'll level off. And so I don't want to say to people there will be no increase, because that would not be true. We think based on the lower rate and the exemptions, it would be in the region of 3 to 4%, gradually dissipating. But we have to look on the other side of it, and that is that we need to do this in order to have the revenue to run the government. And it provides as well, I always say, an opportunity for more citizen involvement, because now that we're moving towards this more direct form where you can actually see it, we expect citizens to speak up more about how their monies are spent, and accountability and that sort of thing, because that is how we better our society.
You have done a lot of consultations with the business community and other stakeholders. Are you able to satisfy the Bahamian people tonight that they are on board? I know that everybody's going to be on board. I understand that. But I mean, essentially, the community accepts that, listen, we must do something about the reform of our tax system, and that we agree with this methodology employed by the government.
Right. We believe, number one, we've come a long way since we first started this process. We've had a lot of input, and we believe that by and large they're on board. The main additional issues that you would hear from the business community is they would like to see the government focus more on expenditure cuts. And we've been explaining, look, these are some of the issues that we have. They want to see more focus on better administration, collecting what's due, and we are taking steps in that direction. And so the process is not over. I think we have to demonstrate to not only to the business community, but to the Bahamian people, because they're saying the same thing. We don't want any wastage, and we want you to do a better job of collecting what is due. And we are making efforts in terms of customs duties, in terms of real property tax, business license. We'll be modernizing our approach to road traffic. automating the system. We're going through a process to do that now. And so there are a lot of irons in the fire, so to speak, because, as I've said before, we cannot expect the Bahamian people to say to us, yes, here's some money, and we do not say to them, we are being good stewards. We have to also demonstrate to them that, yes, we are collecting this, we're reforming this system, we're collecting this value-added tax, but here's what we're doing to demonstrate to you that we're good stewards of your funds.
Mr. Minister, we have only a few moments left, and I know today also there was the bill that was presented to eliminate gender discrimination.
Yes.
Can you give us just a timeline as to when the government expects, first of all, for this to be completed by way of a parliamentary process, because there has to be a referendum?
Yes, there's the debate on the constitutional bills will begin next Wednesday, which is Wednesday the 30th, I think.
Yes.
We expect we would probably meet on Wednesday and as well on Thursday. Hopefully, because there is agreement with the opposition on it, we expect that the debate will not be long or contentious. The Prime Minister indicated that it is the intention to have the referendum on November 6th.
November 6th.
November 6th. And so that would give us, hopefully the debate will be completed in the House and in the Senate by, let's say, middle of August, and then their educational process, which will be led by the Constitutional Commission, can commence, and the referendum on November 6th.
You don't expect much of an educational process. I mean, pretty much everybody in the country understands what the deficit now is being suffered by Bahamian women in terms of at least transmitting their citizenship onto their children once born. So you don't pretty much expect too much of a push back in that respect.
I don't expect so. I think they would, in formulating their report, they were able to travel to the Family Islands. I think they would probably do a similar thing, do some television, some print, some social media. But it is very good to see today that what happened was the Prime Minister gave a communication on the introduction of the bill. The Leader of the Opposition then gave a communication indicating their support for it. And so I think it was a good day to see that sort of unanimity, and we expect to have a cordial debate.
30 seconds, Mr. Minister. How far along the fiscal reformation process would you say that your PLP government is right now? It was an ambitious plan, 2012. You're halfway to, your agenda.
I think we are. This was, in order to get to this point where we have the legislation in the Parliament, we'll be doing the debate and we are going towards implementation. I think we are just under halfway. Once we get the legislation in place, we're able to tweak it, put in place the proper administration of it. I think it sets a wonderful foundation so that we can be more at ease about the revenue base of the country, because that has been the constant refrain from all the observers. The revenue base based on customs duties is extremely narrow, and because of it, your economy is at risk, particularly with external factors. And so we can reform this tax system. We put ourselves on a much better footing.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Very much appreciated. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, our special guest, the Honorable Michael Halkitis, the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. Halkitis, of course, speaking tonight about the introduction of two very important pieces of legislation, the value-added tax bill and the bill to eliminate gender discrimination in the Bahamas by way of a constitutional referendum eventually. Good evening, and thank you very much.